keeping my emotions in check is definitely a big wall that I'm still climbing, and I think I will always climb.
Really excited today to have Lisa Bilyeu on the show. She is the founder of Women of Impact. She is an amazing entrepreneur who created a company called Quest Nutrition, sold it for $1 billion, and in the world of entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs, top of the game. And I'm really excited to talk to her about what it was like building these businesses, but also being a female entrepreneur and doing that and being successful. Without further ado, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I didn't realize I was your first woman, so that's even more exciting. The pressure.
I know, exactly. The pressure on me, actually. So
I like the framing of that.
I guess a great place to start is really about your childhood. Just give a little perspective on where you grew up. I've seen some great videos on TED and your life and Cyprus and all these things. And I thought it'd be a great reference point to take you to where obviously you're very successful today, but it didn't start out like that. It started out in a different place. And I really wanted to dive in that with you.
Yeah, I so love that because to me, it really does, I think, explain where people come from and their mindset. And for me, growing up in England, North London, had Cypriot parents. They were born and raised in Cyprus. So for me, I was brought up first generation, and every which way, from my grandparents to my parents to the school. I went to Greek school on the weekends. I was definitely, like, in hindsight, looking back now, I was definitely just being told the very traditional that I'd get, grow up and I would have kids and I'd be an amazing wife and I need to learn how to cook. And so even though it's like I was brought up in London, which is like, the modern world, the belief system and the culture was definitely still very strong in my family. So even going to university, I wanted to study film, and my dad just still had the very traditional Greek belief system that it was like, well, don't study film. You should either study something academic like math or science, or I need to just basically learn how to cook and be a good wife. So that kind of just gives a very quick sum up of, where I came from.
So your mom was a homemaker, your grandma, right? They didn't have their own businesses per se, right? They grew up in more traditional ways, correct?
Well, so actually my grandmother, she moved from Cyprus to England when the Turks invaded Cyprus. And she had two kids and didn't have her husband. Wow. And so she didn't select to be basically the breadwinner, but she had to. And when she moved to London, at the time, she couldn't afford to work and raise her children. So actually, she put my mum and my uncle in a convent where they grew up with nuns, while she worked as a seamstress for, very intensive labor. But everything she was in front of a sewing machine for 12, 18 hours a day just to try and make ends meet. Did you have a relationship with her where you were around when she was still alive? And I was, yeah. And what was interesting is the thing she would tell me all the time is basically find a good man to support you. And
how could that be? I think it's just interesting because she didn't have one, and obviously she provided for her kids. It's just, why? What was it?
It's a really good question. I think looking back, for her, it was never a choice. It was like, I don't have a husband. I have to raise my children, so I have to work. But this is going against what women should do. And so for her, it wasn't that she wanted to work. It was actually out of necessity. So she was very much encouraging with my mom to marry someone that could take care of her. And then for me growing up, I would honestly, I have such a strong memory. I would be a kid, run in the streets, you'd fall, you scrape your knee. And she, every single time without fail, would come running over with a wet cloth or something. She'd be like, it's okay, you're going to be better by the time you get married. In this super thick Greek accent. But when I really thought about what she was saying is like, it's okay, all hardship is fine, but once you get married, everything's going to be okay. Just get to being married. That was kind of the thing that she would always drum into us. And I think maybe that stems from her having such a hard life. And she's like, I don't want you to lead the life that I've had. So find someone to take care of you, because that's how women should be. she always told my brother, my brother never had to clean dishes. So every time we finished dinner, it was always like, come on, women, get up. And I'd be like, what about him? She's like, he's a man, he doesn't have to. Like, that was very prominent in my everyday life.
So sounds like it left a pretty deep impression on you. So, which was interesting, because in one way it could have been like, you're right, I should go get married, right? You could have just said, yeah. Right. In some way you decided there's something not correct about that. I'm wondering, like, what was there a time that you crossed over into like, no, I'm going to be the breadwinner, or I'm going to be the one, I don't need a husband, or, where did it cross over for you?
Yeah, it's so nuanced and intertwined. So as a kid, I've just had big dreams. I've been one of those people like, I'm going to move to America. I'm going to win an Academy Award. I was that kid that would wake up at 3 a.m. so I could watch the Academy Awards live. Like, I so loved Hollywood and movie making and the ability to be able to affect someone. So with movies, it's like, just depending on the music you use and the stock film that you use, you can literally get someone to feel a certain way. And so I was always extremely intoxicated by that as just a form of influence, I guess. But there's a massive difference between your dream and then it actually becoming part of your life. So growing up, it was like, your head's in the clouds, you're dreaming too big, you're crazy.
Were people saying that to you? Mm-hmm. Or was that in your head?
No, people were saying that to me. So right. I was like, I'm going to go to Hollywood. I want to dream. I want to make movies. And everyone's like, you're a Greek girl from London. Like, what the hell chance do you have to move to America, live in Hollywood? Why do you even want to move to Hollywood? Like, what does Hollywood have? Because it's against the norm. And when you grow up in an environment where you're the person that is going against the grain, looking back now, it's inevitable you're going to get people that have pushback. And that may not be because they don't necessarily believe in you. They just don't understand. And so there's all this fear and things that they have that they are then projected onto you. So the people that were saying, what are you going to do in Hollywood? Who the hell do you know? A lot of it was my dad, because my dad came from a tiny village in Cyprus, tiny, to the point where when he was born, they had to bring a donkey to bring the doctor to nurse my grandmother. So that's how tiny he was, where he came from. So for him, it was just make enough money to put a roof over your head and feed your children. If you can do that, that's a life that's won. So now here I am going, I dream big, I want to make movies. And my dad's just like, keep your feet on the ground, focus on a family, focus on, the real things in life. And over time, even though I fell in love with Tom and I had these big dreams, I did end up slipping into a life of 8 years where I really was just a stay-at-home wife for Tom. And that was not my intention.
Maybe tell people who Tom is.
So he was my teacher. And we literally thought we were going to have a summer fling, summer romance, and we ended up falling head over heels for each other. Now, he had college debt. He, at the time, was earning minimum wage, and we would just head over heels. And I was like, I don't care about money. That's never been my thing. My thing is always like inspiration and electricity and energy and drive and passion. And so when I met him, he was very driven, but he didn't have anything to his name. No accolades, no nothing. But he had drive and he had passion, and he spoke the language that I spoke. It's like he never told me to get my head out of the clouds. And so just from day one, emotionally, we totally connected because neither of us looked at the other one like we were nuts. And now over time, we moved to America. He was like, babe, we wanted to make movies together. We thought, great, this could be super easy. We both got gigs on movie sets and we both hated it. So for my own story, I was a set photographer, and I actually had an actor throw a matchbox at me. I had a DP basically almost step on me and turn around and say, well, you're in the way. And I was like, wow, this is heartbreaking, Rob. My dream of being in Hollywood. I have a job on a movie set, and it's not computing with who I am as a human.
So I have this theme about entrepreneurs being born with a purpose. Like all of us, I feel like we're put here with this dream. And that's what excites us as kids. That's what makes us maybe get beyond those words from your grandmother. But so in one way, you followed that dream into Hollywood. and it was sort of a dead end. And I'm wondering, I think about like the name of the program's, Over the Wall. And I think about like, what was that like? I mean, on that very moment, you were dead set. This was your career. You end up there and you're like, man, this is not it. What do you do?
Yeah, that is one of those realizations where I go, okay, I just need to lay out the facts, take away my emotion, take away the feeling that I have about the possible dream, just lay out the facts and then answer questions. So I laid out, okay, if this business really is, you either have to be willing to step on someone to get, higher up, or you have to be willing to get stepped on enough to work your way up the ladder. If that's actually what the industry is, am I willing to do it? Like, just before I back out, before I, cry myself to sleep that my dream is now terrible and no longer exists, I just say, this is the reality. So don't try and change the world, act as if the world, or act as in the world that really is. So I can't change it right now. This is the way the world may be in Hollywood. And so I just say, is my dream, is my desire, is my drive enough to overcome this? And I said, this isn't a life I want. As a human being, I'm not looking to step on someone to get up the ladder. That's not me. That doesn't feel good. I won't feel good, even if I'm at the top. So I know that about myself. And then also, I don't allow people to disrespect me. So then it's like, okay, well, I'm definitely not going to be in a position then where I'm just going to allow people to step on me, be rude to me, disrespect me time and time again for the bigger dream. So I, in that moment, said, okay, I've now figured out that I am not willing to do that for my dream. So now I know that's not the path. But instead of just saying, well, I'm going to find a different career, Tom and I sat down and we said, what's the no BS answer to achieving our dream without having to do the Hollywood step on or get stepped on? What's actually the answer? And so Tom turns around, he's like, well, babe, if we make our own money, then no one can tell us what to do. We hire the crew and now we set the stage. We don't have to listen to Hollywood. I was like, sure, that sounds like a great idea.
What do you think about making, so when you're saying we basically are trying to break the equation of money, right? To we're gonna be in control of our lives. That's what I'm hearing. So it's so where's the idea? Okay, I was saying, because making money, you could sell drugs, you could
yes.
There's a bunch of things. So where do you guys what happened there?
So it just happened to coincide with my husband when he was at film, and while he was teaching, he met these two young entrepreneurs, and they had come and they'd already built businesses and they'd already made themselves millionaires. So it was the first young guys that Tom had met in the business world that had built their own business. They sold that business for a few $1 million. So they were just way ahead of the game. And Tom and them clicked. And so as we're having this discussion, they're like, hey, look, why don't you come with us? They were very impressed with Tom and his vocabulary and his teaching skills and his writing skills. So they're like, we're about to do another startup. We sold our last business. We're going to put finance into a new startup. It's going to be a tech business. Why don't you come? Why don't you come be the copywriter? And basically, we'll show you how to make money. It'll be easy.
That's easy.
And at the time they said to him, but don't think of yourself as a copywriter. Think of yourself as having any position within the company as you want. If you act like a CFO, then you can eventually become a CFO. If you act like you're the janitor, that's as far as you're going to go. So they basically left it open to him. And Tom, naive enough, took it seriously. So he literally, and when I say naive enough, it's just sometimes that serves you, right? Instead of all the yeah, but you've heard that before. Is it really real? We didn't question it. We just jumped in. So Tom comes home. He's like, all right, babe, I'm going to leave the New York Film Academy. I'm going to go start this business with these guys. It's going to take about a year to 18 months and it should be easy. We're going to build a tech company and we'll sell it in 18 months and we'll have our millions. It'll be easy. And so I said, cool, I can support that. I can do the cleaning, the housework. I was on board. Now, as you were smiling, right? Yes, 12 to 18 months. Yes, good luck there. And so the 12 to 18 months became 8 years.
Right.
8 years. I had then I became a stay-at-home wife, and I'd slipped into the everyday monotony of what my belief system had basically been telling me my whole life. You're going to be a housewife. You're going to have kids. You're going to support your husband. And so that's kind of how I I didn't have any, it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm going to be big in business. It was, okay, we're going to make movies. Oh crap, it didn't work out the way we wanted it to. Here's another strategy. But sometimes, and I'm not sure if you find this, but the strategy sometimes when it doesn't work out, when it takes longer, you have to really ask yourself, like, is there an end point? Do I keep going? You know, like, am I all in? Do I pivot? Do I change course? Or do I spend the rest of my life trying to do this one thing?
So how do you break the chains? Because when you think about it, I once again, we talk about the walls or the pivots, and I think about, you know, we've all been there where we hit a dead end, right? And some people just grind down on the dead end. So even though I would say, like, when we look back and tell the stories, they all seem like we connected all the dots really easily.
Right.
You know, like, it's like, oh wow. And then I came home and we both sat during dinner, like, this sucks, and we move on. And then, like, and I think we always, like, when I have a journal that I've been journaling all the way for 30 years. And I look back on that journal, when the dots don't look so easily connected. When I really look back at myself writing about being there, I'm sad, I'm depressed. Sometimes I have a lot of doubt about my future. So for you guys are in there right now together, which is also interesting because you're a husband and wife. Like, I never made a relationship work on my journey as an entrepreneur because I felt it was a very selfish journey and I couldn't share it with somebody on that level. For you guys to be in there together, you got this emotion where you're like, oh my God, we're on a dead end. Like, what happens? And I don't think it's like, bang, boo, we're going to make a nutritionist bar. We're going to great. And then we produce the bars. And next thing you know, something's in there, like, and your relationship together. I'm wondering what was your relationship? And it probably was pretty ugly at the time. I'm feeling it a little bit. Like,
so I didn't think it wasn't that I thought it wasn't going to work, but I thought that this is becoming serious now, that we have to address it. Otherwise, it could be a fracture in our relationship.
That's what I'm thinking.
What was interesting with what you said is you've never been able to make a relationship work as you were building as an entrepreneur. And Tom and I actually had this conversation from the get-go. So when we got married, he said, babe, you can ask anything of me except for being, oh God, how does he phrase it? You can ask anything of me except to be ambitious. And he's like, the moment you ask for me not to be ambitious is the moment that you're asking me for me not to be me. And that was very powerful because I had to ask myself, I'm marrying an ambitious man. And I find a lot of people get very drawn to, and in fact, females, I've noticed in my space, I don't want to generalize, so I just want to echo that, but I have noticed many females that I know get very, attracted to a man with drive, to a man with passion, to a man with ambition. And then what ends up happening is the reality hits 2 or 3 years down the line. When you marry someone that has ambition, it means they're not coming home at 7 o'clock in the evening for dinner. It means that on date night, true story, we hadn't had a date in over a month. We finally got a date when we first started Quest. I had my really tight, beautiful dress. I had stilettos. I was so excited. I was finally going out on a date with my husband. And we're literally pulling out of the driveway and an employee calls and is like, something's wrong with our bar line at Quest. This is when we just started
Quest. Yeah.
And he's like, the bar line's broken. What do we do? And Tom looked at me and he's like, we've got to go to the facility. So literally we're about to go for dinner. We have to call. We have to cancel our dinner. We drive straight to the facility. I can't go in the facility because for regulations, I wasn't dressed to facility, a food facility. So I ended up on our date night sitting in the car for over 2 hours while Tom was inside. Now, in those moments, I'm sitting there and I'm furious. I'm like, all I wanted is a freaking date with my husband. I can't believe I'm always patient. I'm always reasonable. And all I want, I'm so annoyed. I can't believe it. And I started getting myself all worked up as I'm sitting in the car. And in that moment, I was like, hang on. You knew he was ambitious when you met him. So you cannot be the one to change now that you want to bring his ambition back or like tone it down, let's say. Also, on a Saturday night, do I really think he wants to be in a facility with his head, literally had like a wrench and he was like fixing the machinery? Do I think he wants to be under machinery in like in his outfit with a wrench while his wife is in a really hot outfit in the car? Of course he doesn't. So making him feel bad about it isn't going to solve the situation, and it's not going to move us closer together as a couple. So I was processing it in real time. So when he came to the car, I was like, oh my God, babe, how did it go? Is everything all right? I love you so much. Come here, give me a big kiss. What should we do for dinner? Should we go grab some takeout and have a hot session at home? Like, that's how I force myself, because I'm not naturally inclined to do that. So kind of going back to your question on, is that a problem within your relationship? What did I see it being an end? Is no, I didn't, but absolutely saw it as something must change.
But you were also, you were equals, because I could see you getting consumed by, or one of you, it doesn't make a difference. You can get consumed by someone else's entrepreneurial vision and passion.
Right.
If you guys kind of worked it together. Then you start Quest, right? You're starting this business together, correct?
Yeah. So Quest. So that all happened. So I was staying at home. I was supporting him. After 8 years, I really did just feel like I was a stay-at-home wife. I didn't feel like it was that like game plan that we had in that first year. He was terrible. He was miserable. They were just, he was just trying to make money at that point. He had lost all touch with why we were doing it, and he was miserable. So that's when it came to, I literally sat there and I said, okay, right now I feel like I'm losing my husband. We're not connecting anymore. This only goes downhill unless I address it and unless I change it. So I pulled him aside, and at that point, he'd actually accumulated a few $1 million worth of shares in the company. So they had really grown it. It was doing very well. They used live person, and it was doing really well. But he was miserable, Rob. So eventually I just said, his misery is now affecting our relationship. So I sat him down and I was honest. I was like, I love you. I am here for you, but we have to figure it out, because right now we started by this dream of making movies, and now it's turned into you're chasing money and you're misery to be around. I don't care about money. That's not why I was in it. It was to make movies, not to make money. So I was like, I don't care about money. And so if that's really what is making us miserable, quit. Let's move to Greece. Let's have a life of just fun. Like, I want to write. He wants to write. I want to draw. Like, what's that life that's going to bring us joy? Because I've just lived 8 years of no joy. And I refuse to live another day of that. And so he turned around. He's like, yeah, I agree. He's like, but just to be honest, I have no right to collect the money, right? If I don't cross the finish line, then I don't have no rights to ownership. And I said, fine, I don't care. Like, give everything back. So He literally, the very next day, we agreed. We that night went on Google, like, accommodation in Greece, like cheapest accommodation. And we pivoted, right? We were like, I'm not going to just succumb to this for the rest of my life. This isn't a life I want. And so he went to quit. And then the story goes, his business partners turned around and were like, we're absolutely miserable too. Let's start another business that's predicated on passion and drive. And they came up with the idea of Quest protein bars.
I gotcha. Okay. So it's the same group. It's the same group that was part of that. And then how do you get involved? How do you become part of it?
So they turned to me and they're like, oh, Lisa, you're a stay-at-home wife. Can you help? And I was like, sure. And then, so actually kind of reflecting to your very, very first question of where I came from, I had been taught time after time, you support your husband, you support your husband, you support your husband. And so when it came to it and everyone's like, oh, Lisa, you don't have a job, because they still had the tech company. They were trying to exit the tech company. The plan was exit the tech company, sell it, build Quest on the side, just at a point where you sell the tech company. Now you've got Quest to go over to. So they were full-time at the tech company. And so they're like, how are we going to start Quest when we don't have employees? And so they're like, Lisa, you don't have a job. So it's like, cool. So literally on the weekends after work, the wives, we're all measuring ingredients, where we get a rental kitchen by the hour. And after work, there's like 6 or 7 of us. And we went with rolling pins and knives, and we just start making them by hand. Everyone kind of had a bit of their responsibility. So one of my husband's business partner's wives, she was kind of doing the formulation. We then hired someone professional that knew how to make it shelf stable. So we kind of put money into that. We put money into just figuring out the formula. Because then we thought, oh, then we'll just have another company make it. No one wants to get into manufacturing. Manufacturing is the worst thing to get into. So we'll formulate the bar, we'll hire a company, we'll give it to them to make. Well, of course, they turned around and laughed at us. And they're like, you realize the reason why this bar doesn't exist on the shelves is because it can't be made. So we had everyone say no, all the manufacturers say no. And so in that moment, we're like naive enough to go, let's just make the bars ourselves. How hard can it be? We make them by hand in a way. Now it's just a matter of putting them through a machine. Well, of course, and there's a whole host of things that come along with that. But that's where I turned around and I was like, okay, I'm helping with shipping. I'm helping with, wrapping the bars. And we just started growing so quickly. And because we were growing so quickly, they still hadn't sold the tech company. So we're growing to the point where now we've hired our first employee. We've got our first manufacturing room in Compton. And Tom is just like, babe, someone needs to be there. We've got an employee, but no one's there. So do you mind just like going there and being there while you're shipping out your 3 orders a day? Now, of course, we grew at 57,000% and we became second fastest growing company in North America. And so me just shipping bars off my living room floor, helping my husband, because that was my belief system. Support your husband and don't lose your house, Lisa. That was what I was just repeating to myself. And because we grew so quickly, I did go from shipping from my living room floor to 2 years later, I had to learn how to get.
So this is an interesting thing, because I think a lot of people think that in order to start a business, you've got to be an expert at it. But, when you talk about being naive, like we were just naive. I often think like when I started the company too, I didn't know technology. I was English literature in college and business. I didn't know how to do anything with technology, but I had this vision of what I wanted. And then I taught myself. I almost feel like, I don't know how you feel like, being naive is kind of good. Because being naive means you're going to look at solving a problem differently than how it's been done. And if everything was done the same way, we would never have any innovations. There would be no camera here. There'd be no computer. So it would just be the same stuff. So I don't know how you feel about it. I guess in some way you're scared because I don't know anything about making a bar. It's going to go in someone's mouth. I could kill them. They can poison them. But somehow you kind of get beyond that somehow. What do you think that is?
The formulation of it is a whole different ball game. There was we built out our R&D and so it was very intense. It's always iterations and it's always like less 1 grain of salt. Does that make a difference, right? So it's intense. For me though, I was very much focused on, so we had Tom and his business partners were focused on, they kind of split the company up into different areas. And so for me, it was like, just ship the bars, Lisa. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to help my husband ship the bars. And what we were doing at the time, our initiative was, we're just going to invest a certain amount of money and we're going to ship free bars to all the people in the health space. And in those boxes with these free protein bars, there's going to be a letter. And this is way before social media. So it's not like now where people are like, yeah, that seems obvious. But we put a letter. We got people's addresses. We would, kind of find where they lived. We would put bars in. We would write, hey, John, we know that you're great at blah, blah, blah. Here are 2 free protein bars. Please be honest and tell us. If you hate them, please tell us. If you love them, please tell us. We only want to know the truth. So that's how we started marketing. We were just sending them out to everyone in the space. And so I had to learn how to start shipping. So it's like, you're shipping some bars and then you're growing. And so I started off just literally slapping stamps on a box. Now, when you're growing at 57,000%, you go from literally shipping a bar from your living room floor to then having to get on the phone with UPS, deal with freights, pallets. I had no idea what a pallet was. So going to what are the walls? It's like, you've got a choice, Rob. You really do. In those moments, how badly do you want it? Because in this day and age, there's no excuse of not knowing something if you put the time and effort into it, right? If I want to learn how to bake a cake, I can Google it. I can watch a video. If I want to know what a pallet is, I can Google it. I can watch a video. How do you stack pallets? You literally can go on YouTube and type in, how do I stack a pallet? And there's so many videos that explain how to stack a pallet. So I knew that there was no excuse. It was just, there are problems. You have to learn. So you're starting from scratch. A lot of the time you're starting.
So did you ever, when you hit, we talk a lot on this show about failure, and that I look at it very neutral, as in failure is where you learn. It's not a negative thing. It's like we need, and when we're failing, it means we're stretching ourselves to learn, because if we knew everything, we wouldn't fail. So when we're doing new things, like you're doing these bars, so were there every time, so when you can think about a specific event when you were failing, but you quickly, like you said, the idea is not fail and quit. It's fail and move forward and learn. Like, is there a specific moment, like a big one where you're like, oh man, that was bad, but I'm going to keep it going?
Oh God. I mean, there's so many. And it may be silly things sometimes, right? It's like you get a shipment in of peanut butter, and you've got your forklift driver, and he's moving let's say the peanut butter, and he's putting them high. And there was one time where he didn't put it down, he didn't put it properly, and the whole thing came crashing down. Now, when you're just starting a company, you have to stop entire production. There's no cleaners. So literally, I have a video. I still have the video of this day of Tom and our CMO in their flip-flops in peanut butter. And we're literally scooping it up. Now, it's like, it's a failure. You can kick yourself. I saw the pallet. Should have said something out loud? It's like a small thing. But it really is going to, how do you see it? If you see it as, right, you even said, oh God, what was the phrase you just said? You see it as neutral, I think.
Neutral. It's not it should be not an emotionally negative thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So in that situation, you can go, oh my God, I've just lost all this money. How could I? Right? You can see it as a failure. You can beat yourself up. You can see it as like, okay, it's part of the process. You can see it as a lesson. One of my favorite things is Edison. It took him something like over 10,000 tries for him to do the light bulb. And the saying goes that someone was like, oh my God, how did you deal with like all these 10,000 failures? And he's like, it wasn't failures. There were 10,000 lessons. And I'm like, that's it. It's just framing, period. And so in those moments, going back to the real truth of like, even everything I'm saying now, that wasn't how I was thinking at the time.
Yeah, of course at the time,
No, yeah. I love how you pull that out. That in that moment, you're going, I've got a choice. I can either stop or I can get past this. Like, those are the choices. And it is that simple of a choice. Now, once you choose, I'm going to get past this, now you actually have to figure out how to do it, right? So that path isn't simple, but I do think making the choice is simple. And so in those moments, it's like, all right, you got a choice. You either stop the company because it's too freaking hard, or you figure it out and keep going.
So, you've obviously been very successful. You sold Quest for $1 billion. You continued forward doing all the video stuff, interviews, all this stuff you did, writing a book and all this. But as a woman, how big is the wall?
It's never ending. I almost like can't see the top. Just when I think I see it, oh no, it still goes. But I tell myself that. And the reason why I tell myself that is every time I hit a wall, I need to motivate myself to either get over it or knock it down.
Being an entrepreneur is very hard.
Yeah. And
I'm obviously I'm not a female entrepreneur, so that's why I want to peel back that onion. Like, I assume it's a little harder, because because there aren't as many female entrepreneurs, there aren't as many female business leaders, there aren't as many female venture capitalists. It's not that women are not good at this, right? I think once again, everything neutral. Everyone has a purpose in life, and they're out there living it. But there's something in the game that's stacked a little bit more. And that doesn't give you an excuse to be a failure, by the way. I don't look at like, we all came from life. So I didn't come from a family that had a lot of money, but I didn't have a great education. I don't know. Okay. But so I agree, no excuses. But with that said, it feels like women have the deck stacked against them a little harder,
Yeah, I do think, and there's a big discussion about, I don't know if you've ever read Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, but a lot of that, I loved that book, but I heard that there was a lot of backlash. And I was like, why? I freaking loved it. And everyone was like, yeah, because she's telling you to go in and act like a man, and we're not men, and so we should be able to, have emotions. And it's like, to me, it's not even about a man or a woman. Like, I don't even think like that. I think of like, who's freaking amazing at what they do. That's the most important thing. And then, to be honest, if I had a woman that all she did was cry in business meetings, that would be a hindrance to my business. I would feel like that if I had a guy that did it. So again, I don't care whether it's a man or a woman. It's how do they behave and how do they show up every day? And I think that over time, we have a bit of a rap of being very emotional. And here's the thing, I think sometimes it's true. So because it's true, when I've noticed for myself, when I get emotional, I'm not articulate anymore. And when I'm not articulate, people don't take you seriously. So I don't take that as a dig against me as a woman. I just go, Lisa, anytime you get emotional, you don't articulate. When you don't articulate, how is someone supposed to perceive you? So I don't beat myself up because if it's a woman. It's like, no, it's because I'm getting emotional. Whether it's a man or a woman getting emotional, I would feel the same way. So now as a woman, how do you show up to be your best self, not as a best woman, be your best self in that position, and then really assess what are the things that are going to make people dismiss you?
So, as a human being, especially as an entrepreneur, I often believe we all have this little thing that sits in our head. It's like a little person that says things to us, sometimes that are not very positive.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So, but I remember I read this book by this explorer, Ranulph Fiennes. He's this guy who goes all around the world, climbed all the big mountains, and he did he went like a 1 week of running marathons day after day, and he got a heart attack in the middle of it and kept running. And they asked him, like, why would you do that? And he said, it beat the little voice in my head. It beat the little voice that's telling me I can't. So I know I've had a voice in my head. Even I'm 52 years old, I've had this voice that tells me you're too young, like you're too inexperienced.
Oh.
I'm curious if you have a voice. Is there that thing in your head and you're like, shut up? And you're in a meeting and you hear people saying things, but they're not saying things to you. Do you have that?
Oh, yes, I do. It's on loudspeaker. I've got a Dolby surround sound.
What does it tell you?
Yeah, I really do. Yeah, like you have no right to do that. Who do you think you are, Lisa? And the thing is I've tried to read all the books.
Does it say any words to you, but does it say a specific word? Lisa, you're too blank, or you're not enough blank. I'm just stupid. Yeah. I heard that from you. You told a couple stories and I heard you say that a couple of times. And I told the producer, I said, she has that voice in her head tells her stupid. Mine says you're too young. When I went public, I was only 30 something years old, and people, you're too young. When I hired my first sales guy, you're too young. You don't know what you're doing. I'll tell you what to do. And and then sometimes I had to find like a gray haired old man as a mentor, and they were crappy people. You know what I'm saying? Like, so stupid is in your head a little bit.
Yeah, it is.
What is that? I've always tried to figure out what the heck is that thing?
Yeah, I've really tried to identify it because I've recognized it's my trigger. And I've recognized that because me and my husband would get into really weird arguments. And it's just like, and then when you really, because we really do love communicating. So once you peel back the onion, as you like to say, we started to really realize that, or at least I started to realize it was always the way I would get upset if he started to use language or a tone that made me feel stupid. And I identified that. So I was like, okay, I've got a trigger. Now I've identified my trigger. I know it. I told him, I was like, it's when you do X, Y, and Z. So he knows how I'm being triggered. And now I looked back and I said, why are you triggered like that? And the truth was my brother and my sister are incredibly gifted at math and academics. And growing up, I wasn't. I was the artist. I was the kid that really struggled. I was mildly dyslexic, still get my B's and my D's mixed up, my G's and my J's, even now in my 40s. But as a kid, I literally thought I was stupid. No one explained to me. No one knew what dyslexia was. So I just thought I was stupid. And so I would literally at dinner sometimes, God bless my father, but he would throw math quizzes at you. And so my brother and my sister are like this. And I'm like, oh God. And I'm like using my fingers. And it creates anxiety, right? As a kid where you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get picked on. I'm going to get, people are going to know that I can't do math as quickly. So I started to develop an insecurity over that for sure. And I recognized that as I started to enter business, and I started to recognize that I can't allow that, because there are going to be times that I am stupid in comparison to the people around me. And now going back to the negative voice, if it's telling me that, right, I have choices. I can either try and switch it off, turn it down, or use it to my advantage. I've tried switching it off, Rob. I don't know about you. Never works.
I know.
No matter how many people just like, don't listen to it.
Yeah, don't listen to it. I know.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, and I'm I'm a person of like, no, actually tell me what works. Give me what works. I need to do what works, because all this like frilly, like, oh, just don't listen to it, like language, while I wish it was true, it's not. So I tried that, didn't work. I go, okay, doesn't work. It still makes me feel badly. So now I've got another choice. I can either try and turn it down. I can either, right, and turn it down, meaning,
maybe don't be emotional about it. You hear it in your head, but you don't act on it, maybe. Like,
exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it's still there, but you're not allowing it to be, it's almost more like background radiation than it is the Dolby surround sound, right? So even turning it down, it hasn't served me. It hasn't actually made a huge amount of difference. But if I can use it as my friend, all right, now I'm not actively pushing it away. Now I'm greeting it with open arms. Now, how do you do that? It's all about perspective. So when it starts, and I have like almost like a mental list of questions. So if it's like, oh my God, Lisa, you're so stupid. Let's say in a scenario, let's say I'm talking to you, say something like, I have no idea what that man's talking about. Like, what is this? Oh, Jesus. Right. And now I'm starting to feel stupid. That voice starts coming in. Oh my God, you're stupid. Now, what I do is say, okay, friend, thank you for telling me that. What can I learn from this? And I actually use that language. Thank you, friend. Call it a friend. Thank you, friend. What can I learn? Because now I see it as my friend is helping me out.
Yeah, and I think there's such great lessons in what you just spoke about how do you turn it around. But I think also recognizing, this is one of the things I wanted to do, having these honest conversations, that if you're out there and you're an entrepreneur, you're going to have this voice. Mm-hmm. I'm too young, Lisa's stupid, someone else is whatever. And it's natural. It's how we react to it. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs that just react. They're reacting to it. Like, I am stupid. And you reinforce it until you think, I can't move forward. I'm frozen. So I think it's amazing what you've done. It's such a hard thing. I think it's the ultimate wall. The ultimate wall to me is the mental wall. It's not the product wall. You said, I can look on the internet and figure out how to make a pallet go out of a warehouse, right? But it's hard because it's such a personal thing. You don't go on the internet like, what makes me say I'm stupid? Like, I know there's be 1,000 articles, but me, what makes Lisa? It's very different than what makes Rob. So I think if you're an entrepreneur out there, I think what we're trying to say is that you're going to have this voice. It's natural. It may be even what drives you. It may even be the thing that drives you to be this person that you want to be, right? I don't know what you think. I
love that you said that, Rob. Literally, I was like, it's so true, because it does drive me. Oh, you don't want to feel stupid next time? Find out.
Be smart, right? You're like, I'm going to be better. I'm going to be better than everyone. I'm going to go big. So my last question to you, because we're running on time, is that as a female entrepreneur who's just been so successful, and obviously you just have such a positive energy in the world, what one piece of advice, would you give to other female entrepreneurs that are starting out, that are out there?
Yeah, it's really, I think, how I end my show, Women of Impact. So I interview incredible women, talk about the same sort of thing, mental state, emotions. And I really end every show on be the hero of your own life. And what I mean by that is I love my husband. I'm so devoted to him forever. And I was waiting for him to save me. So those 8 years where I was a stay-at-home wife, I was looking for him to come home every day and bring light, joy to my life. Financially, I was waiting for him to build a company to bring so that I could, have a roof over my head. And it wasn't even just my husband, my parents and friends and co-workers. A lot of the time you wait for other people. And the truth is, you are the hero of your own life. Now you just have to act like it. And you have to remind yourself of that every single day.
Awesome. Be the hero of your own story.
Yeah.
Be the hero of your own life. That's a great way to end. Lisa, thank you very much. Being the first female entrepreneur on the show, even if I just remove female and just say entrepreneur too, I just think you're an extraordinary person who's done extraordinary things. And I think there's so much that you still have left in your life, obviously, to share with the world. And thank you for sharing it with me and being really open and honest. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I love your questions and how deep you go. I just really think it's going to be so incredibly valuable for other entrepreneurs out there. So it's been an honor. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you.